Unity is strength. Make we reason. Make we talk. If we see corruption in any shape or form, we're going to highlight it. Make we talk. Jeffrey Tavares represents yard and broad and the entire diaspora. As long as it affects the life of our nation, uncover the truth, make we reason, make we talk. And we don't care about no vumva viva va, no upper echelon, nobody is not above the law. As long as it now help Jamaica, make we talk. Make we talk. Unity is strength. Make we reason. Make we talk. If we see corruption in any shape or form, we're going to highlight it. Make we talk. Jeffrey Tavares represents yard and broad and the entire diaspora. As long as it affects the life of our nation, uncover the truth, make we reason, make we talk. And we don't care about no vumva viva va, no upper echelon, nobody is not above the law. As long as it now help Jamaica, make we talk. Make we talk. Unity is strength. Make we reason. Make we talk. If we see corruption in any shape or form, we're going to highlight it. Make we talk. Jeffrey Tavares represents yard and broad and the entire diaspora. As long as it affects the life of our nation, uncover the truth, make we reason, make we talk. And we don't care about no vumva viva va, no upper echelon, nobody is not above the law. As long as it now help Jamaica, make we talk. Make we talk. Unity is strength. Make we reason. Make we talk. If we see corruption in any shape or form, we're going to highlight it. Make we talk. Jeffrey Tavares represents yard and broad and the entire diaspora. As long as it affects the life of our nation, uncover the truth, make we reason, make we talk. And we don't care about no vumva viva va, no upper echelon, nobody is not above the law. As long as it now help Jamaica, make we talk. Make we talk. Unity is strength. Make we reason. Make we talk. If we see corruption in any shape or form, we're going to highlight it. Make we talk. Jeffrey Tavares represents yard and broad and the entire diaspora. As long as it affects the life of our nation, uncover the truth, make we reason, make we talk. And we don't care about no vumva viva va, no upper echelon, nobody is not above the law. As long as it now help Jamaica, make we talk. Make we talk. Unity is strength. Make we reason. Make we talk. If we see corruption in any shape or form, we're going to highlight it. Make we talk. Jeffrey Tavares represents yard and broad and the entire diaspora. As long as it affects the life of our nation, uncover the truth, make we reason, make we talk. And we don't care about no vumva viva va, no upper echelon, nobody is not above the law. As long as it now help Jamaica, make we talk. Make we talk. Unity is strength. Make we reason. Make we talk. If we see corruption in any shape or form, we're going to highlight it. Make we talk. Jeffrey Tavares represents yard and broad and the entire diaspora. As long as it affects the life of our nation, uncover the truth, make we reason, make we talk. And we don't care about no vumva viva va, no upper echelon, nobody is not above the law. As long as it now help Jamaica, make we talk. Make we talk. Unity is strength. Make we reason. Make we talk. If we see corruption in any shape or form, we're going to highlight it. Make we talk. Jeffrey Tavares represents yard and broad and the entire...
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the edition of the Make We Talk program as we standing by to join the People's National Party press conference scheduled to get underway at 10 o'clock U.S. time, 9 o'clock Jamaica time. Whoever listening, watching from around the world and the Eastern Caribbean, like, share, and subscribe. Welcome to the program. It's a busy day ahead of us today. We have the PAC meeting. I think it's at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. We're going to bring that live to you too. There are so many things going on in Jamaica. The People's National Party press conference is based on housing. Last night we spoke about that, what is going on in our country, Jamaica. How many Jamaicans are still without a home? So this morning, we are going to, the People's National Party having their press conference this morning, and we will bring that to you live. Hopefully, we can hear some things that we need, what we want to hear from them. I truly want to hear from them. So let's pray and hope that they bring something to us that we want to hear from them. Many of us is saying that the PNP should have more press conferences. Some people are saying that the PNP is, even myself is saying that the PNP is a bit too cold, too lukewarm. But in the field of politics, if I remember the days when remember the days when the former Prime Minister of Jamaica, Percival James Noel Patterson, when he was Prime Minister, it never jump on Mr. Patterson here, he comment on. And we must understand also that in the field of politics, you know, it's not everything that you hear from the government, well, from people saying that you must really comment on it. What we need to do and what we need to say is that vital issues that is facing this country, the level of corruption, the level of nepotism, $50,000 is being, $5 billion rather, $5 billion is being spent on roof program in Jamaica. Good morning, St. Martin's. Welcome to the Make We Talk program. Share up the live feed. And yet our people don't have any roof over their head. So many months after Hurricane Melissa, and the start of a hurricane season, you hear nothing concrete from the government of Jamaica pertaining to what do they have in place to assist our people in case of another natural disaster. You hear nothing from them. Nothing from Desmond Mackenzie. But the only time you hear from Uncle Desi is because the president of the Jamaica Teachers Association came out swinging. He came out swinging, and because he came out swinging, Desi get upset. But you know something? My fellow Jamaicans, we cannot sit idly by, you know, and allow these people who we put in power to sit down and dictate to us. We cannot sit idly by and allow our own black brothers and sisters in Hanover, Westmoreland, St. Elizabeth, and some part of St. James and Trelawney have no roof over their head. And how many money has been collected already? Last time I was speaking about this and somebody sent something to me. Why don't I speak about the money that the PNP collect? I have no proof that the People's National Party collect any money. I'm not a member of the People's National Party. I don't pay dues to the People's National Party. Nor am I a member of the Jamaica Labour Party. I don't pay any dues to the Jamaica Labour Party. Nor am I a member of the UIC, nor the NDM. I'm merely a Jamaican citizen who decided to speak truth to power. And I make sure I try to carry everything that I can and the two political parties in our country. This morning, the People's National Party, led by its leader and Jamaica's opposition leader, Mark Jefferson Golding, along with other members of the People's National Party, Nikisha Burchell and others, Senator Floyd Morrison, Professor Morrison and others, General Secretary Dayton Campbell, Dwayne Vaz, Jalika Jess, and Andrea Kissins. They're going to have a press conference this morning. Now, any well-thinking media house who is independent from politics like myself will carry this press conference. That doesn't say I'm a member of the People's National Party. Huh? I am going to bring this press conference. I am a Jamaican and I'm doing the civil duty as a Jamaican. No, don't come on this platform and tell me must ask the PNP about the money they collect. What money? I'm not aware of any money they collect. If the People's National Party collect money for Hurricane Melissa, they need to come out and tell the Jamaican people how much money they collect. Likewise, the government of Jamaica must come and tell the Jamaican people how much money have they collected overall and how much money has been spent. 400,000 United States dollars was collected by Olivia Babsy Grange. That's 62 or 60 million Jamaican dollars. And yet our people are still languishing in the broiling sun and the element of the night. What can go so? While the members of parliament and the ministers are in their air-conditioned homes and air-conditioned offices, and our fellow Jamaicans from the length and breadth of St. Elizabeth straight into Westmoreland, Hanover, St. James and part of Trelawney still don't have a roof over their head, even to St. Anne's. But well-thinking Jamaicans will not say that this is so. Majority of them will say, no man, not go so. A lie Tavares the tell. Or a lie make we talk the tell. Cause him our dirty comrade. When will we think about our fellow citizens? When will we think about our citizens who are facing the pangs of hell? But yet we as Jamaicans, because we are a member of a political party, our party can't wrong. Well, no party do not pay this program. No political party in Jamaica don't pay for a computer, a microphone, or internet for me. No political party put on my 10 pound of chicken back on fire. Now my tooth in a dirty girl. So I will speak truth to power. And I will say this without any water in my mouth. This political party, since independent Jamaica, is the most corrupt political party in the history of Jamaica. Let me say it again. Since independent Jamaica, the Jamaica Labour Party government led by Prime Minister Andrew Michael Holness is the most corrupt political party in the history of this country. I have seen corruption in this country. Don't get me wrong, in the 1990s there was corruption. But the 1990s is baby compared to the 2000s under Andrew Michael Holness. Our people are languishing in the element of the night in St. Elizabeth and Hanover and Westmoreland. My God, what kind of heart this government have? People are still on a tarpaulin in Westmoreland, in Hanover and St. Elizabeth. And before the Jamaican people come together, all they can think about is PNP and JLP, JLP and PNP. The time has come, my Jamaican people, to put away party politics and to speak truth to power in this country. The time has come, my Jamaican people, to call a spade a spade. I have never seen so much blatant corruption in my entire life in this country. And the Jamaican diaspora must wake up. We must say to them no more. We need accountability in this country. And whether the PNP in power, yes or no, the PNP make a part of the government. Because the PNP is the government opposition. And they help to make laws in Jamaica too. But we, the people, have the ultimate say. The buck stop with we, the Jamaican people. And we, the Jamaican people, are too quiet. We are too silent in this country. We, the Jamaican people, are too silent. Because it don't reach our doorstep, we're quiet. Because it don't reach our doorstep, we don't have nothing to say. Because we have roof over our head, we're not saying anything. It is the duty of any government to provide housing for its people. I said it last time and I'll say it again. It is the duty of any government that is in power in Jamaica to provide housing for its people after a natural disaster. That is why the Housing Trust was created. It is the duty of any government in Jamaica to see that our people who live overseas, who are languishing in the prisons overseas, it is the duty of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade to find out if they're okay and render assistance. So those numbskulls, those uneducated numbskulls that the Jamaica Labour Party have over by TikTok, who are saying it's not the duty of the government to provide no housing. Go back to school. Go and ask Desmond Mackenzie. It is the duty of the government of Jamaica to provide housing for its people. There are people sleeping out in the cold in this country, while those who are being paid by their political parties have roof over their head. When will we wake up in this country? When will we say no more? When will we say enough is enough? When will we say we will not sit idly by and put up a political party because we are PNP or we are JLP? When will we say we are Jamaicans and Jamaica come first? When will we say Jamaica come first? And not a political party. The fundamental change that we seek in this country, my fellow Jamaicans, will never come from a political party. The fundamental change that we seek in Jamaica must and have to come from we the people. Not from a political party. And if we need change, we the people must take to the streets from Negril Point to Moran Point peacefully and demand the fundamental change that we seek in this country. How long must we continue like this as a nation? How long must we continue like this as a nation? When we, the people, hardly having a say in our own country. All we can see before us, we can't see the Jamaican flag. All we, the people, can see from 1962 until now is the color orange and the color green. When can we see the Jamaican flag and say enough is enough and demand accountability in this country? When? When will we, the Jamaican people, demand the change that we truly seek? As we stand by to join a press conference from the opposition leader's office, I say to my fellow Jamaicans, both home and abroad, when will we find ourselves our back against the wall? When will we do so? Where is the spirit of Nanny of the Maroons? Where is the spirit of Paul Bogle? Where is the spirit of Sham Sharp? Where is the spirit of Martin Luther King Jr.? Where is the spirit of Paul Bogle who led a rebellion from Morant Bay to wherever? We are quiet. We're too silent in our country. And we allow nepotism and cronyism and corruption to be the order of the day. My Jamaican people, the time has come for all of us to put away party politics and stand up for this piece of rock and stand up for our brothers and sisters who need our help. In no other modern democracy can you have a government collect so much money and people are still living out in the elements. In St. James, Hanover, Trelawney, Westmoreland, St. Elizabeth. And the Jamaican diaspora, all because them want to be recognized, all because they want to be recognized and get out of old dead donkey. They can't come out and speak the truth in what is going on in this country. They can't come out and say, we will not stand up for this. We, the Jamaican people, it's time we stand up and demand accountability. Demand accountability from all angles of government in this country. Demand accountability that we can leave at Jamaica for our children. a better Jamaica. There is nothing wrong with this country that cannot be fixed. But we, the people, must fix it. We can't depend on a political party to fix Jamaica's problem. We are a part of the problem. And so, my fellow Jamaicans, from Negril Point to Moran Point, arise your slumber, ignite a nation, and rise up to the cause of this country. Demand accountability from the corruption that is going on in our country. If it's not now, then when? If it's not now, then when will we demand accountability? Corruption here, corruption there is the order of the day. And the Jamaican people are quiet. When the people of Sri Lanka see what is going on in their own country, they didn't think about any political party. When the people of the great United States are demanding accountability, they don't think about Republicans or Democrats or independent. They think about America. When will the Jamaican people think about Jamaica? When will the Jamaican people think about this piece of rock? From Negril Point to Moran Point, from Galena Head Mountain to Blue Mountain, from Junker Head Mountain to Dolphin Head Mountain. When will we demand accountability? As we stand by to join a press conference from the People's National Party, opposition leader Mark Jefferson Gold in office, about housing in this country. For far too long, the coffers of this country has been milked dry. And don't get me wrong, we have to call a spade as we see it. No better barrel, no better herring. But I say to my Jamaican people this morning, you are the change that you seek. You are the accountability that we seek. Every 5 years, we go to the polls in this country. What do? We put on our colors. We forget about the problem that we face. We forget about the lack of water, the lack of proper road, the lack of proper medical facilities. All we think about is run up and down on a political campaign and take pictures of who on the battery rider and from who on the printer and from who can take pictures, from who not take pictures. Arise from your slumber, Jamaica. Arise from your slumber. Ignite a nation with one simple cause and one simple creed. Yes, we can. Rally round a cause, my fellow Jamaicans. Rally round a change that we seek in this country. Rally round the flag, the black, green, and gold. If you truly love this nation, if you truly want a better Jamaica, my fellow Jamaicans, rally round this flag. Rally round the cause of change. Because somewhere There's a wind of change blowing. But we are too party politics. We are too die-hearted to feel the winds of change in this country. We do not feel that we can be the change that we seek. The change, the winds of change is blowing around our nation. But our people are too die-hearted to feel that winds of change. Our people are too die-hearted to feel the winds of change blowing in Jamaica. And because we are too die-hearted to feel the winds of change, every 5 years we swap black dog for monkey in this country. And we forget about the how many years of corruption and nepotism and cronyism. What we the people must do and have to do is once and for all realize that party politics will never change in our country. So we must be the change. It is now 6 minutes after 10 o'clock in the United States, 6 after 9 o'clock in the land of wood and water, as we stand by to join a press conference from the leader of the opposition office there in Kingston, Jamaica, post-Melissa housing crisis rocking the nation. The presenters are Dr. Dayton Campbell, Dr. Angela Brown Burke, Ian Hales, Nikisha Burchell, Zalika Jess, Andrea Presins, Dwayne Valls, Professor Floyd Morrison, opposition spokesperson on housing. Professor Floyd Morrison will be coming to give his presentation too. We're standing by to join them live from the opposition leader's office there in Kingston, Jamaica, what they have to say about the housing crisis facing our nation. And we, our people, just sit down. We just sit down and accept anything. And you know something? No wonder Darrell Vaz called us dumb, dark, and stupid, you know. Because Darrell Vaz knows that he will do things and get away with it. All they can hear them, left them after their money. It's not their money. It is taxpayers' money. And they borrow money to fund any project in Jamaica. We have to pay it back. While millions of dollars is starving off into some Swift account in the Cayman Islands. And who have family trust in the Cayman Islands and buy a house in South Florida for much $1,000, while our people have no house to put their bed and to lay their head in. While our people have nowhere to sleep. Tents upon tents. Government around the world has sent financial donation and otherwise. On April 14th, 2026, how many months after Hurricane Melissa, our Jamaican people, majority of them who got hit by Hurricane Melissa, still have no roof, have nowhere to lay their head. They're out in the element of the night. They're out in the sun in the days. But we must continue to be the voice of change. We must continue to be the voice of change in this country. But those who are on social media, who are trying to be the voice of change in this country, they alone can't do it. If the Jamaican people don't see that there's something fundamentally wrong in our country, then we'll continue like that. Until the Jamaican people ignite a nation and demand the change. Demand the government of the people, for the people, and by the people. Demand the government of the people, for the people, and by the people. It cannot continue. But the order of the day in our nation, $1.4 billion school bus scandal. University of West Indies drill scandal. That scandal, Tira scandal, Mora scandal. I have never, in all my 50-something years in this country, I have never seen so much level of corruption like this government. I lived through the 1990s and there was corruption in the 1990s. But the 1990s corruption was baby to this. Was really baby to this. How long must we as a nation be like this? How long must we as a people every 5 years continue like this? We demand justice for this and we demand justice for that. When we will demand this nation? When we will demand that Jamaica be a better Jamaica? When will we demand proper health care? When will we demand accountability in this country? When will we do so? What we do at all times is to curse one another and call one another drunk or labor rights or drunk or PNP. While those who are head of the People's National Party and the Jamaica Labour Party, they're friends. They go to each other's birthday party. They go to each other's children's party. They are business partners. But we out here are criticizing each other and calling each other's name while they have a roof over their head. For those who are just joining us, we're standing by to join a press conference from the leader of the opposition party's office. The press conference is housing crisis rocking Jamaica. That's the topic of the press conference. The presenters are Mark Golding, leader of the opposition and president of the People's National Party. Dr. Dayton Campbell, general secretary of the People's National Party. Dr. Angela Brown Burke, Ian Hales, Nikisha Burchell, Zalika Jess, Dwayne Vaz, Senator Professor Floyd Morris, and Andrea Perkins or Kissins. I can't hardly pronounce her name anyway. They're coming on. They're the presenters for this morning press conference as we stand by to join them. People are still languishing underneath blue tarpaulins. In St. Elizabeth, in Hanover, in Westmoreland, in St. James, in Trelawney, in St. Anne. while those, Amal and Morgan and others, have their roof over their head. And others in our nation who are sleeping in school shelters same way. When will we, as a nation and as a people, come together and say we are one? When we join forces together, we become so powerful. It's unbelievable. We become so powerful. But we don't see it that way. The politics of this country has divided our people until now. The politics of our people, the politics of this country has divided the Jamaican people until this blessed day. We must stand up and we must demand accountability. And I will not stop saying that. I will not stop saying that. We must demand accountability. We must demand change. And if we can't do so, then our corners darken this country. If we cannot do so now, this present moment, at this dividing time in our nation, if we can't do this, then we will never have a Jamaica to leave for our children. I will not come on my program here and promote any political party. I will not come on my program here and defame or disgrace anyone. What I will say on this program, Jamaica has never seen a Mark Jefferson Golding as leader of this great nation. I'm prepared to say that. I'm prepared to go further too. That I think the Jamaican people must and should give Mark Golding a chance. Yes, the People's National Party have a history of a lot of things. But Mr. Golding has never presided over a corrupt institution. Mr. Mark Golding has never presided over a corrupt transportation sector, or a corrupt health sector, or a corrupt agricultural sector, or a corrupt social security sector, labor and social security sector. As we stand by to join a live press conference from the leader of the opposition headquarters in Kingston, Jamaica, and president of the People's National Party, I am prepared to say this on this platform, that the Jamaican people must give and should give Mr. Mark Jefferson Golding, a son of Jamaica, a chance to lead this great nation. I'm prepared to say that. What I am not prepared to say, though, or what I should say, that stand by. Just a moment, please. As we go live to the press conference now.
%100% representation of MPs in Westmoreland. Today, we also speak on behalf of the entire parish of Hanover. We speak on behalf of more than 50% of St. James through South St. James, and later you'll hear from our representative from St. Elizabeth. So the voice amassed today is not a small voice, it's a big voice representing a large proportion of Jamaicans who are still reeling from Hurricane Melissa. We are not yet at a point where we can say like the government that we're resilient and strong. We're still struggling. So today I'm going to invite my colleagues to tell you what is the lived experience on the ground in their constituencies. And I'm going to start with our General Secretary and MP for Eastern Westmoreland, Dr. Dayton Campbell. Thereafter, you'll hear from Dwayne Vaz, the MP from Central Westmoreland, Ian Hales, or MP from Western Westmoreland. You'll then hear from Andrea Perkis, who is from Hanover, and then Nikisha Burchell, South St. James. Zalika Jess from Northeast St. Elizabeth will close the MP's presentation. Thereafter, you'll hear our policies, a review of the government's policies and our proposals through our spokesperson for housing, that is Dr. Professor Floyd Morris. You will also hear from Dr. Angela Brown-Burke. She will tell you about how the Ministry of Labour and Social Security is handling the crisis. And then our party leader and president of the People's National Party, Mark Golding, will give you the leader's statement on the crisis. Please welcome Dr. Dayton Campbell.
Thank you very much, MP Burchell. Good morning, everyone. Eastern Westmoreland is where working with landfall is still having quite a bit of challenges. The main issue of concern at this point in time, I would say, is still around shelter. We have quite a bit of our constituents who are still residing in unacceptable conditions. I went to a community by the name of Amity recently with a group that was making a donation. And one of the residents spoke to the condition in which he is living. And what he has to do is to use a tarpaulin, and the back of it, to prevent some of the wind from coming in, is actually the side of a grave. That's the reality as to how persons are still living within the constituency. The roof program, as outlined by the government, has not benefited everyone that is affected as yet. I'm still hopeful that those who remain without any level of assistance will receive the assistance in due course. And the way in which it is structured is causing quite a bit of heartache as well. Because the fact that only selected hardwares were chosen has caused some of my constituents, for example, from Betterton, who have to go all the way to Savannah Lamar to get the supplies. They have had to be spending about 80 to 100,000 in transportation costs. So just imagine that you've received the 500,000 because your house is totally destroyed. But because we did not select a hardware in Betterton or one elsewhere in Eastern Westmoreland, you have to go all the way across the parish. The transportation cost to bring the goods to where they live has caused them to be losing about 80 to 100,000 out of the soil that could otherwise go to the building material. For persons who were told that they could use this first $75,000 to do other things, like pay school fee or buy furniture or whatever it is, those persons have had to travel to Montego to the remittance companies to try and get the funding from those remittance companies. And that, as you have seen in the media, has been nothing short of chaotic. I've had the discussions with the minister about us having at least one location in each constituency, preferably if you could have one location for the hardware in each division, electoral division. And obviously there are several other remittance companies that are there that you could use that will prevent these persons from traveling all that way. The second issue is that of businesses. To date, we've gotten some assistance through factories for businesses in the White House. But the rest of the constituents, almost all of the small businesses were decimated. And those persons have not received any assistance at all. And that to me is also unacceptable. Because to get these persons independent, where they can fend for themselves and take care of their families, you would want to restore their livelihood as well. And those persons have not received any assistance. In terms of infrastructure, the roads were totally devastated in the constituency. I heard an announcement of a hurricane, post-hurricane road program for $1.3 billion. And $500 million out of it was to be spent in Kingston and St. Andrew. Right? And the era in which you have the major devastation, it was less than $100 million. We have not received any allocation for road repair in Eastern West. Some of the areas are impassable still, and you still have areas where it is, as you've seen in Bluefields, you have areas where there is significant compromise of the roads, which is also affecting even JP's ability to restore electricity. And as I segue to JP's, we have 7,912 total customers in the constituency. 4,073 customers currently have electricity, 3,839 customers don't. So roughly 50% of the customers in Eastern Westmoreland still don't have electricity. 6 months? 6 months, approaching 6 months after the hurricane. I think more can be done. And two of the areas, Darlington and Lettertown, it is actually a generator that is providing electricity to some of those persons who are going to benefit. So we are a far way off from where we should be. I will leave it at that because I know that others will cover some of the other areas.
Good morning, everyone. Let me start with the roofs program, because every single day we get numerous calls about what is happening. And even this morning on my way here, I spoke to 3 persons who had 3 different situations. One person was assessed physically, along with persons in her community but still have not heard anything, so wanted to know what's happening. Another person who called was not assessed physically, but they came into the community, took her information and said they would come back, and no one has came back. And there was this other person who was not assessed any at all, but has been to the NIS office on numerous occasions and was told she just has to wait until they come into the community. These are serious situations that we're having, because after 6 months, I've still not been able to pick up the pieces after such a devastating hurricane. And they are frustrated because they don't know what is really happening with regard to the government assistance. And this is the only substantial program that has been implemented. And the fact is the majority of persons have not been able to receive assistance. And even those who have, the assistance is still inadequate with regards to the type of damage that they got to their houses. Dayton spoke about the cash grant where persons have to travel all the way to Montego Bay, and that has been frustrating again for the residents who have suffered in Hurricane Melissa, because what they have gone through, they should not have to be going through this note just to get the assistance that they totally deserve. The shelter issue is also another major issue, especially at the Petersfield shelter in central Westmoreland, where we still have 41 residents, which include 12 children. I was there on Sunday and again yesterday to visit the residents to hear what they're saying. And the major issue they're having is communication, because the fact is the government has made so many promises since the passage of the hurricane to them that has not been fulfilled up to today. The last thing we have heard is that by the 8th of May, they should be moving them to suitable locations. But they are disheartened because every time they hear something, it has not come through. So we're really hoping that this comes through. But the area that they have designated to put these houses, we have not seen much work being done in that area. So I'm really wondering if this May 8th deadline is actually realistic. But I'm hoping and praying that it really works out. And another issue we're having is that, as I said, with communication, even with myself, the ministry personnel came down, toured the sites, and not even the common courtesy to invite the member of parliament, who the people are calling every day, to at least have that part of communication where we can liaise and let persons know what is happening. And I think that is unacceptable. But what is really bothering everybody is the condition that the persons are living in. And when you visit the shelter, it's really disheartening. You really pray and wonder what will happen to these persons. But we're really hoping that this May 8th deadline doesn't pass. And we're also asking the minister to really think about the persons who left the shelter, because persons who would have given, they have given certain ultimatums to leave the shelter at different times. Not everybody stayed, some people left. But if you visit the communities, you see people under tents, literally, because they had to leave the shelter because they thought they would have been thrown out. So they left, but some of them are living in really deplorable conditions. So what I'm saying, the ministry has the information because you took the information from these persons. So if you need help to go and find them, you can also contact me because we know where they are. But persons who have left the shelter, we're also asking to remember them when the housing solutions are being provided. The road situation in central Westmoreland is horrible. And up to yesterday, we had to deal with a protest on the Hartford to Williamsfield main road where persons blocked the road because of the poor conditions. And we understand the frustration they're going through because every day traversing these roads, they damage your vehicles, they damage everything. And they blocked it yesterday. We have promised to do some temporary work, which we are starting today and tomorrow. But it is only a temporary fix, and that is from my own resources. Because at the end of the day, the resources that we are waiting on from the NWA to do patching will not come forth probably until a month or two, because we contacted the NWA yesterday. We heard that we will get a new patching program in the new financial year, but we were not able to get a timeline from them as to what date it will be done. And we have many other areas like this across the constituency where I know people are very frustrated about what is happening. And there's also a bridge situation because we had two bridges that were seriously devastated in the hurricane. That would be adding to one we had before in Fullersfield. But in Frome and Grange, serious deterioration. And the Frome one, we have had two major accidents already. One person died in a bike accident, and then we had a head-on collision after. And in Grange, up to yesterday, a car fell into the area that has been deteriorated. So we're asking the government to move speedily on this because we have not been able to hear from them as to when some serious work will be done in these areas, because we did not see anything in the budget and we have been asking, but we have not been able to get a real response from them. And before I close, just quickly, electricity restoration. Most areas in Central we have gotten electricity, but we have had a lot of pockets in different areas where some sections have light and some don't. And we have been in contact with the members of the JPS, but what is really happening, as they are saying, they are short staff. I guess because the team that came to assist has left for the most part. So the local team is saying they're short staff with regards to getting the work done. So we're asking if anything can be done to improve the levels of service that the JPS has so they can go out there and quickly restore, because I didn't have electricity for 2.5 months and it was so frustrating. So to imagine being without it for 6 months, it is really unacceptable for where we are in this country, and we should have had that sorted out by now. But I'll leave the other issues to my other MPs who will speak soon. Thank you.
Good morning. Party leader, colleagues, good morning. 6 months after Hurricane Melissa, the people of Western Westmoreland is still suffering. And how are they suffering? For those who have been called by the ministry to collect a check, they're still, majority of them are still waiting as we speak. And if you do get a call to collect a check, most of the citizens from Western Westmoreland have to travel to Montego Bay. not in Westmoreland, but to St. James. For those that had the little shops on the corner and do a little commercial activity within a lot of our communities, they haven't gotten any assistance as yet from the government. And it is causing some hardship in the constituency of Western Westmoreland. Look, if the story should be told that 6 months after a hurricane, you'd be still waiting from your government to get a level, some kind of assistance, one. And two is that when you leave your home, I think there's no other parish now which have a garbage pile up than the parish of Westmoreland. Something has totally happened since the hurricane where we can't get the garbage in Westmoreland to be collected. So when you come out of your house, you enter the bad road. When you enter the bad road, you're running into garbage. Something has happened somewhere. And I just want to say, look, if the government chooses to neglect the parish of Westmoreland, all the tax-paying citizens of Westmoreland, I haven't received a list from government as yet in terms of who got damaged, who received checks, who's still going over Montego Bay. I haven't received any of that as yet. In terms of JPS and the constituency of Western Westmoreland, I'd probably say around 85 to 90% of our citizens have been restored with electricity thus far. We're having a problem also, I think within some schools you have school attendance on the decrease because of what is taking place with the parents. For the farmers in Western Westmoreland, I don't think there's 2,000 coconut trees leaving in Westmoreland, period. And for those that used to go on the roadside, sell a little breadfruit, sell a little coconut, just to make ends meet. You have no breadfruit tree anymore, and you don't have no coconut tree anymore. And this is leading to a level of, in certain areas, you have increase in criminal activity. I want to appeal to the government, look, you have 3 members of parliament from Westmoreland. We're willing to work with the government. We wouldn't want to come here today and have a press conference to cry out and bawl out for the people of Westmoreland. We're willing to work with the government. But 6 months and still waiting to get a check or to get your garbage pick up or to get your road fixed is unacceptable in any modern society. So I want to appeal to the Minister of Local Government, to the Prime Minister, and to just ask, how much more can the people of Westmoreland accept or take before they start taking to the streets? And, you know, we're doing a lot in terms of holding down these demonstrations, which plan every single day, you know. Because MP Vaz just spoke about what? I have had to at least basically stop at least 5 or 6 demonstrations because it doesn't do me any good and it doesn't serve the country any good. So once again, I'm asking the government, I'm appealing on behalf of the people of Western Westmoreland, the citizens. We need our garbage to be collected. It is 6 months now. We have been waiting. We need our roads to fix it. 6 months. We have been waiting also. I appeal to you. Make we help the people of Westmoreland get over the problems that they are now faced with. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. We are not recovering well in Eastern Hanover. As it relates to the roofs program, I believe a more comprehensive assessment must be done for it to make sense. A number of persons would have left their communities to find shelter after the hurricane. So I am appealing to the minister to extend that period and continue to do some assessment. There is a lack of communication and dissemination of information when it comes on to the general public. And I can cite instances. Miss Angela from Claremont in Sandy Bay Division went down to Lucy to the launch of the roofs program. She posed on stage with a $500,000 check. You can find her picture on the Prime Minister's page. Miss Angela's home fell to the ground. Her shop fell to the ground as well. But let's focus on her home. Miss Angela received $200,000. Miss Angela went to the office in Lucy, the NIS office in Lucy. She was not helped. There must be a better way. There has to be a way to assist persons. If an error is made, there must be a way for it to be corrected. It can't be, we can't help you, nothing can be done, go to your Member of Parliament's office. Another situation with regards to the roofs program, a lady from Chester Castle, she lost her cell phone. She went to the office, she got no help at all. That lady turned up to my office in tears. We must do better. As it relates to the schools in Eastern Hanover, all 3 high schools have been damaged. No work has started as yet. At Noculva Technical, we have students from grade 9 to 11 attending for 5 days, grade 7 to 9. They're alternating 2 days, 2 and 3 days weekly. Mount Ward School does not exist anymore. School is being kept in a church hall. Hopewell High, no repair has been done. Merlin Otti, no repair has been done. I am appealing to the Minister of Education to come on the ground in Eastern Hanover and do it with urgency. We need your attention in Eastern Hanover. With regards to the shelters, we still have 19 persons in shelters in Eastern Hanover, but we are deeply concerned as the hurricane season is around the corner and over 90% of our shelters are still damaged. Road rehabilitation is not happening. We had deplorable road conditions in Eastern Hanover before the hurricane. Spark program and patching 3 roads in the constituency is simply not enough. Again, our roads were very bad before the hurricane. Places like Milestone, Jericho to Cascade, Maryland, Cash Hill, Ramble, Flint River, through Cold Spring to Woodsville. These are areas that need urgent attention. It is not fit for daily commute. As it relates to electricity, most of the constituency got back electricity. We only have a few areas in Chester Castle Division and 1 area in Hopewell Division, Woodsville, that is still in darkness. We have noticed a trend in Eastern Hanover, and I must highlight this. We are on the ground. We know the areas where most of the citizens would have voted for Jamaica Labour Party. We know the areas as well where they would have voted for the People's National Party. In areas like Bessie Baker and Axandas, Pumpkin Bottom, those are strong JLP areas. Beneficiaries have received their monies. I am asking you, Minister, what about the other areas? What about the people in the other areas and the other PDs? Regardless of who they voted for, they are still waiting. When Hurricane Melissa came, it did not knock on doors inquiring about political affiliations. It didn't. Before it disseminated, families were displaced. We have persons who still have tarps on their houses. I am asking you to pay attention, Mr. Prime Minister, to all of the people of Jamaica. I am the Member of Parliament for Eastern Hanover. I am not the Member of Parliament for the citizens in Eastern Hanover that voted for the People's National Party. I challenge you, Mr. Prime Minister, and his cabinet to do same and take care of the Jamaican people. Thank you.
Good morning.
South St. James represents 53% of the parish of St. James. The other 4 constituencies share up the other 48%. When Hurricane Melissa made landfall, you would have seen it on every snapshot from National Geographic, the Weather Channel, and our local ODPEM. You could see Cambridge highlighted big. It went directly across the entire South St. James. We are a landlocked constituency. Therefore, we have to go through either Westmoreland, Hanover, St. Elizabeth, Trelawney, or other constituencies in St. James to get into South St. James. And it's quite disheartening to drive on smooth roads in Montego Bay that have been speedily remedied in the center of Montego Bay and then traverse really, really bad roads in your own constituency. We have raised with the government, both in the Standing Finance Committee, through letters to the Minister of Works, as well as to letters to the Minister with responsibility for Labour and Social Security of the conditions in South St. James. The Springmount Main Road, which is in the East Central constituency of St. James, has been rendered impassable. It's now a waterfall. That was the main thoroughfare that we used to get into South St. James. And therefore, constituents must now go through a donkey crawl from gutters to Hampton. Most of that road, again, is not in South St. James, but I have to lobby for representation for it to be fixed because it's just a track. It has precipice along the sides and is really a dangerous route. The residents are threatening to block that road again. And we're asking for some attention from the local government to this road immediately. No, it's not my road, but this is what my constituents must go through. Springmount as well. To enter the constituency through the 3rd route, you have to enter at Sweetwater, Johnson, and that is stairs. Have you ever seen roads broken and degraded to the point where it literally has steps? Cars can't drive on steps. We're asking for, if it's even a little marl, so we can have that road passable so that heavy units can come through that location, bringing in relief supplies, bringing in material to rebuild homes, and taking out our agricultural produce to market. I must explain to the constituents of South St. James that the Member of Parliament has not been given the $10 billion the government boasts about for home repairs in South St. James. I don't know. Someone yesterday in Stonehenge, a constituent, said to me, maybe if more JLP MPs were affected by Hurricane Melissa, then the MPs would have been included in the decision and also in the process of getting relief to the constituents. It is sad that a disproportionately higher number of these constituencies are represented by the People's National Party. We're asking that the government relook at this decision to close the roofs assessment database. We are deep rural constituents, and therefore when a hurricane strikes and your home is destroyed, you can't stay there. So the Ministry of Labour can't say, we went to your house and you weren't there. Of course we weren't there, there's no house. Of course we weren't there, we have to be catching with a neighbor. Of course we weren't there, we work in the city. Deep rural constituencies require more care and a better understanding of how we operate. We need a town crier to come into the communities to announce the dates when these representatives from the Ministry of Labour and Social Security is coming around so we can make ourselves available. We also require posters to be printed. They do it when it is politics time. Print some posters, put it on the shop phaser, put it on the light poles so people can know where they can get relief. And for God's sake, please stop directing constituents from the NIS office to the MPs, knowing fully well the MPs cannot assist them with their housing repair. That is the roofs program. Like MP Perkis, I was asked to invite 3 constituents to the symbolic check handing over ceremony, which was held at the West Jamaica Conference in Mount Salem nearly 2 months ago. And if you go on that page, there's a gentleman from my constituency. His name, we call him Manawal. Manawal was cheesing with me and the minister with a check saying $500,000. I asked Manawal to come with me that day and to help the minister to show that the program is working. And we went in good faith. Manawal has not even received a text message up to this point to confirm whether or not he'll be getting that check, or if he should have just taken the cardboard sign and taken that to the hardware. I want to tell you about our small businesses in South St. James. Our small businesses, they come to me, our shopkeeper, or contractors, or hairdressers. They say, "Why, the house might be fine, but business stop because we have no roof on our business. Our stock was destroyed. Whatever the storm didn't take, people came and took the rest." When I tell them that the government has not announced any economic assistance for businesses in one of the parishes that has been so badly affected, they say it's liar telling. Because how could a caring government not think about the resuscitation of the economy of a constituency that has been so ravaged by this hurricane? Talk about our farmers. Our farms were wiped out. We are the farming constituency in St. James. We feed Montego Bay. We also contribute to the Falmouth market. The crops were destroyed. We're expecting that a constituency like South St. James would receive a lion's share of any fertilizer, any spray, any seedlings. We've had some trickling of support where agriculture is concerned, and we're surprised that other constituencies that don't even plant corn, yam, tomato are getting big agricultural inputs and not so much South St. James. Finally, I want to speak about the education and the slow pace at which we are restarting in South St. James. So a number of our schools have received letters from the Ministry of Education indicating that they have been approved for sums for the repairs of their schools. Grossly inadequate in a number of these instances. But the biggest challenge is that we are seeing from these deep rural constituencies, contractors and teams of outsiders that we don't know taking camp in our communities, and they are the ones doing all the work on these properties. I implore of the Ministry of Education to understand how the culture works within these communities. You must have a local liaison working with these outside contractors who understand how the wind blows. So if they put on the roof this way, the wind go take it back. You also have to work with the local communities to secure their buy-in. You don't want to hear, say, you put down 50 length of steel and you come back tomorrow and it's only 10 because they don't feel like they're a part of it, so they work against it. We're asking you that we do not choose to come here and complain to Jamaica. We've waited almost 6 months because we were giving the process the time to work, but our constituents are losing their patience. And you know that when Jamaicans are fed up, them block roads.
Good morning. There are 3 critical issues that have been affecting the constituency of northeastern St. Elizabeth since Hurricane Melissa. The first issue has been adequately ventilated by my previous colleagues, and that has to do with the issue of housing. Now, it is very clear that many persons have still not been assessed for housing grant or housing assistance in the constituency of northeastern St. Elizabeth. We see it every single time we go to the supermarket, we go on the road, people approach us asking for housing assistance or building material because they didn't even know that the government had set a deadline by which they should apply for assistance. Those who have actually been assessed, many of those who have been assessed have actually not received a benefit. They haven't received anything from Housing Trust. They haven't received anything from Trans-Jamaican Highway, which has assisted some persons through that program. They haven't received any form of governmental assistance whatsoever. And those who have received assistance will tell you that it is simply woefully inadequate. What they're getting, the little mickle, can't put on back a roof. It can't fix up back the window, it can't put on back a door because it's just not sufficient. And so I always pause and hesitate when I attend conferences of this nature, because I understand the role of the spin doctors and the PR pros who will make it appear as though here goes the People's National Party once again asking for more money. And so I want to make it clear that we're not asking for more money for ourselves. We're asking for additional resources through whatever avenue the government deems best suited for those persons to get assistance. And we ask on behalf of the people like the elderly lady I saw a few days ago in Pepper, whose house blew down and she have to catch with her neighbors. I ask on behalf of the people in Balaclava, in Silo, in Thornton, who get a little bit of assistance, but them still out a door because they can't, it's just not sufficient to put on back or to build back sufficiently. And so we come here this morning once again to really ask the government as a matter of urgency to, one, revisit that application period that was stipulated, extend the time period for persons to apply for housing assistance, building material assistance, and also to increase the funding so that those persons who are affected can actually get a meaningful contribution and not just some token contribution that does nothing and doesn't even move the needle. Now, as it relates to the second issue plaguing the constituency of Northeastern St. Elizabeth, it has captured national attention in recent days, and that is the flooding in Santa Cruz. But the truth is, this is a recurring issue. It is a long-standing issue. The town of Santa Cruz has been flooded from before I was even born. And it continues to be flooded now, but it has increased in frequency, and the devastation has now quadrupled since Hurricane Melissa. The harsh reality is that the drainage network is insufficient. It is antiquated. It has not kept a pace with the massive development that has happened in the town of Santa Cruz. And so what do we get? We get the town being flooded every single time it rains. It floods because we don't have adequate drainage. And so the town of Santa Cruz is now the drain. Back Street, or as my councillor Donovan Pagan would remind me, Sydney Pagan Drive, is now the drain because there isn't a sufficient drainage system to channel the water from the hills of Santa Cruz, which constantly inundate the town, mashing up the roadwork. And so it is now causing a recurring expenditure, a recurrent expense on the national purse for the government to constantly be fixing back the road. Instead of wasting taxpayers' resources, I'm using this opportunity to call on the government to put in place a meaningful plan once and for all that will solve the drainage and flooding issue that plagues Santa Cruz. I'm calling on the government to establish as a matter of urgency a multi-agency task force which comprises representatives from the parish council, national works agencies, the political representatives such as the councillor, the member of parliament, community members. And I ask for these inclusion because community members, the local representatives, have intimate knowledge, local knowledge, almost indigenous knowledge of where you can find some of the old drains where you used to channel the water. And so it is important to have a broad-based consultation, not just where the NWA comes in and fix one little drain in a Santa Cruz and then rainfall and we flood out again. We need a multi-agency task force to be set up with a view to presenting a viable solution to fix the issue of flooding in the town of Santa Cruz once and for all. Balaclava was flooded a few days ago as well. There isn't sufficient resources. I've reached out to the National Works Agency. They tell me they don't have the money to do drain cleaning at the moment. We need a routine maintenance of the drains in Balaclava so that the town don't flood whenever rain falls. As it relates, finally, to the issue of roads, and I do not propose to speak very long on this, but my constituents would not forgive me, especially the people in Good Hope, in Park Mountain, Bogue, where the road is splitting in two. they would not forgive me if I do not appeal to the government to conduct emergency road repair as it relates to our constituency, but especially the constituencies, because I don't wish to be selfish, the constituencies which have been devastated by Hurricane Melissa. We have seen deadly roadways emerging after the hurricane. And so a special plan needs to be in place to address these issues. It can't just be done through routine patching. There has to be a structured and comprehensive approach to fixing the craters that exist, the bridges that are tumbling down, the roads that are collapsing. We need urgent assistance. And so I use this opportunity not to criticize, not to complain, but to say that this is really a cry for help. This is a cry for help for the people of northeastern St. Elizabeth who have suffered devastation following Hurricane Melissa. It is a cry for help, for urgent housing assistance and building material to be provided to those who are still without a roof 6 months after the hurricane. It is a cry for help for the business community, the residents of Santa Cruz who constantly are flooded with very little rainfall, which disrupts and brings business and economic activities to a halt. It is a cry for help for those along the Lacovia to Burn Savannah main road who are fearful of being washed away like how the water washed away the bike a few days ago. This is a cry for urgent assistance and intervention so that people can actually build back better. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, party leader. My colleagues have spoken passionately about the challenges they face. One of the thoughts going through my head as I listened is that we need a government that ensures that there is a plan so that elected members of parliament don't have to rely on a hope and a prayer. 6 months after Hurricane Melissa devastated communities in Western Jamaica, there are just too many families who remain stranded in the ruins, not just of their homes, but of a recovery system that has failed them miserably. Today, all of us you see here, we are standing with those affected communities, urging immediate government action on systemic shortcomings, recovery gaps, and the urgent need for transparency. The official reports indicate that over 25,000 homes were damaged and 15,000 families displaced. The Ministry of Labor, through their roofs program, and in terms of what they're doing, the failure that we're seeing is therefore simply unacceptable. What is clear is that the processing grants on the roofs has faltered badly. The majority of affected families, as you would have heard, are unaware of their status and actually have no reliable system like a dedicated hotline or an online portal to ask questions or get updates. And so the request, the ask, that there is a system that allows individuals to actually come forward if they have not been assessed is one that is real. But first, they also have to know they have not been assessed, because the minister assured me that they don't have to be there on the ground to be assessed. And therefore, if individuals came into the community, I am going to assess if I live in that community. I am going to believe that I have been counted. If there's no way to determine who has been counted and who have not been counted, then it means that there's a big gap that should rest on the conscience of a government that has been elected to take care of its people. The current system being used, as you would have heard, create further distribution barriers, forcing rural residents to face long trips, as you would have heard, multiple visits, each costing money and time that could have been better used. These issues don't affect one parish, but the story is the same across several parishes, which therefore points to a systemic breakdown that real families endure every day. What is now clear as well is that the broader recovery also lags way behind the promises that were made by the government. In fact, many of us would have remembered that they committed at least 12,000 homes by January for grants and 2.5 billion in aid. Yet, we are learning that only 3,200 grants have been delivered, with 70% of the affected parishes still awaiting meaningful assistance. By any measure, by any yardstick, this is woefully inadequate. For those who have been assessed and have actually received grants, there's also still some clarity that is required. So, for example, how does a family whose house has been totally destroyed end up on the list of those getting $70,000 rather? How do they get on that particular list and not on the 500,000 list? How do individuals who live in a community, a yard with several houses, see their neighbors receiving grants and cannot get a response from the ministry, from the NIS office, from the parish office about where they fall, if they do, on any of those lists? And I suspect that for many of those, the issue of clustering is something that needs to be looked at. The issue of our ministers having an understanding about how everyday Jamaicans live and what constitutes a household becomes also something that we have to look at. This morning on the news, I heard a statement from the minister saying that they are only giving one grant to a household. And that's fine if that were to be true, because others will tell you that it's not. But let's assume that that is true. Then the question becomes, how do we define a household? And from everything that I'm picking up from the ground, some households have been made invisible by the system, and I'm being generous, because others would say that some households have been made invisible because of the politics. The public has not been provided with explanations about the shortfalls that we are seeing. We have gotten no firm timelines to complete the distribution. And the result is that citizens who bear the burden are once again left in the dark and without answers. So today, we are talking. Sometimes you get the sense that the government really wants from the opposition for us to be on our knees and to be begging for our constituents to get their just compensation. The Prime Minister says from time to time that the opposition only talks. The truth is that's our role, because we are in opposition. We are not the government in charge of government resources. Although many of you would have seen a lot of efforts that were done through charities and collaboration. But yes, we are talking, and we will continue to talk until we see action taken. Let's talk a little bit about the We Pay system, which was launched on January 30th with the National Payment Corporation of Jamaica for $500 million in disbursements, but which is obviously nowhere ready for broader rollout. What we have seen so far, that it has been operational about 20%. We have seen payouts funneled through one lone Montego Bay Western Union. Is that system set up and ready to serve other parishes? I believe that's a question we ask. And that's a response that we require, because we believe that it is wicked and unjust to pretend that this limited pilot can serve Jamaica-wide needs with families in St. Elizabeth, in St. Anne, in Hanover, in Westmoreland, in St. James, who are still in limbo. In fact, my information is that there are parishes where nothing has been put in place for it to be rolled out in those parishes. There's no QR code for anybody to get. Yeah? The back office isn't ready. And so what we're asking for is for the pretenses to end and for the government to come clean and tell us what is happening. If there are issues, let Jamaica know. Let those who are waiting on the government that was elected to know where you are and why it is that you are where you are and where we go further. And so today we call upon the government to act decisively, to expedite the approval of roof grants with fully operational query hotlines and online portals that allow Jamaicans to ask questions and to get answers. We're also asking for WePay to be activated nationwide without further delay. And as I said earlier, we're asking for detailed parish-by-parish timelines and shortfall explanations. We want a commitment to weekly public reports on remedies and progress. No vague promises. We want deliverable, measurable results, or the government needs to move out of the way those who have been tasked with this responsibility, who are obviously failing. We know, we are aware, that Minister Charles is in Finland as we speak, and there is what, an 8 hours time difference? So I would urge the minister to stay up tonight and to put in some work on behalf of Jamaicans who have been left devastated. To the minister, we say it's time to prioritize people over public relations. Jamaica's recovery depends on accountable, transparent, and fair leadership. And since we're talking about accountability and transparency, Jamaicans are also asking about the Support Jamaica portal that was launched to mobilize donations and ensure accountability. Although the site is supposed to provide real-time tally of funds raised, this is not visible from the dashboard. And so the government needs to indicate where that information can be accessed, how do Jamaicans track donations received, and how those donations are being disbursed. Too many Jamaicans are suffering without a meaningful pathway to restore order and dignity to their lives and those of their children. Every time, I just want you, as I leave, to leave you with this picture. Every time rain falls, or rain even set up, in many of these communities, these individuals relive the trauma of Melissa. I am asking you, I am asking Jamaica to be vocal about it, to ask the government if they are okay with that level of trauma day in, day out with Jamaicans who have done nothing wrong for which they should be punished, who elected a government that they thought would be able to act transparently, fairly, and on time. What we need is action now, not a bag of noise.
Ladies and gentlemen, Leader of the Opposition, colleague parliamentarians, and members of the media, pleasant good morning to you all. We in the People's National Party are subscribed to the fundamental view that shelter is a right to our citizens. And as such, we believe that after a natural disaster such as Hurricane Melissa, that it is the duty of the government to restore to near normalcy as possible to every citizen that has been affected in terms of their homes. These are individuals who have labored and toiled to build their houses. Some have thrown their partners, some have done their round robin. And within 30 minutes, based on the hurricane, their investment were destroyed. It's not a fault of theirs, it's natural disaster. But any caring government is going to move with alacrity to ensure that these individuals get as much assistance as possible to build back their homes. And we have seen and heard talks and promises from the 29th of October, the day after the hurricane, about the extent of assistance and support for Jamaicans in the affected parishes with their homes. And very little has been done based on what my colleagues have articulated. A peep into some of the available data tells me that 113,000 individuals have been assessed thus far. Of that number, 42% suffered minor damage, registered or assessed with minor damage, 40% major damage, and 18% severe damage. That means their houses were totally destroyed. I want to look primarily at the latter figure of 18% because 18% of 113,000 amounts to approximately 20,000 households. My mathematical calculations, based on the policy articulated by government, says that those individuals would receive $500,000 because they would fall in the category of severe damages or total destruction. That is $10 billion. The government announced a program for $10 billion. So that means the 20,000 individuals who have suffered severe damage would have eaten up all of the funds allocated by the government. And then the others would have nothing to get. And so we have heard a whole lot of figures being bantered about by the government in terms of how much they have raised in the history of Jamaica. Over $1 trillion. But yet still, one of the areas that has been severely damaged, houses, $10 billion. And I want to call upon the government to make sure that the appropriate resources are allocated to deal with this crisis that we have on our hand. Because if we are talking about building back better and restoring to normalcy our people where shelter is concerned, $10 billion is not going to cut it. It might be a start, but we'll be fooling ourselves if those 113,000 individuals or the 20,000 with severe damages to their homes would be getting any assistance. And I want to touch on an area that from about November of last year, The government has signaled to the country that they will be providing some 5,000 container homes to individuals who have been affected in the hurricane. They have moved to tell us that those houses would be in the island by January. January came and gone. We heard in March that the houses would be here. It is now April. It is now April. My question to the Prime Minister and the Minister with responsibility for housing, where the house them there? Where the house them there? Poor people in Culloden need the houses. Poor people in Petersfield need the houses. Poor people in Jericho need houses. We can't allow our brothers and sisters that we talk about, say we care about them, to be living in the deplorable conditions that they are in post-Hurricane Melissa. And then we make promises to deliver 5,000 houses, and all know we can't see one of those houses being delivered to the people based on the commitment of the government of Jamaica. I'm not talking about what other institutions have done. I'm not talking about what the private sector has done. I'm talking about the specific program that the government has said that they are going to be obtaining 5,000 container homes to deliver to the people of Jamaica that have been affected by Hurricane Melissa. We need to know where the house them there. And finally, one of the major problems that we have seen during the hurricane is the issue of land tenure. And the government said that it would address it during the recovery effort, because a lot of the houses, especially in Westmoreland, were built on lands that were leased by the people, and so they couldn't build a permanent structure. And we know what happened with that and the hurricane. I want to know from the government, in this post-Hurricane Melissa recovery effort, what measures have been put in place to ensure that when a man gets the $500,000 check, they don't build back in the same situation that would contribute to them seeing their houses being destroyed? It is the duty of the government to ensure that the people get access to land to build back better than before. The leader of the opposition, my leader, had committed to ensure that we free up some of the lands and make the land available to those individuals who were living on government-owned land, to make sure that we create an access mechanism for those individuals by changing the requirement, the time frame in which individual could apply for those land in terms of tenureship. We want to know, where is the government on these issues? Because if it is that we don't take into consideration land tenure, we are not going to be building back better, and we are not going to be building back stronger. I say to the government of Jamaica, come forward, come clean, and tell the people of Jamaica the truth. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, colleague, MPs and senators. ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, those listening in, I thank you for joining us this morning on this important discussion on the state of play in Jamaica in mid-April after Hurricane Melissa hit our country on 28th October 2025. I called this press conference today, this morning, because the government intends to take the NARA legislation in the House this afternoon. And the NARA bill seeks to establish an entity in law which has been announced but is not yet effectively operational because it has no legal basis, and is supposed to be the agency to drive the recovery of the country from the damage caused by this terrible hurricane that hit us in October. NARA is going to be set up to oversee the implementation of projects approved by Cabinet. The legislation has an array of issues which commentators have highlighted and which the opposition will also use the opportunity this afternoon to speak to. This is not the time for that. But I made the point that if you look at what is happening in our country now, the government has dropped the ball, and the people of Jamaica and the economy of Jamaica are suffering as a result of the government's ineptitude in managing the aftermath of Hurricane Melissa. In the few months, in the last quarter of 2025, when Jamaica was inundated with local and overseas NGOs, well-wishers, providing relief to our people, food distribution, other forms of assistance, things were appearing to be on track for recovery. However, that time has passed, and the glaring gaps in Jamaica's response to the disaster have been laid bare. The government's primary program for addressing the shelter crisis occasioned by Hurricane Melissa, the roofs program, is hopelessly inadequate and is being incompetently administered. We have heard from the MPs the horror stories of those who were promised and have not received any support or the support that they were promised. The difficulties of access, the lack of comprehensive coverage of people who are in desperate need of help. Tens of thousands of Jamaican families are living in a post-Melissa environment where they lack habitable shelter in which they can rebuild their lives. This is a deplorable situation which ought to be the focus and priority of the government at this time. Yet, in his budget presentation, the Prime Minister didn't speak to it at all. And if you look at the design of NARA and its focus, that is not what NARA is being established to tackle. This is an urgent and present need which must be addressed. The $10 billion under the roof program, less than a third of 1% of GDP, less than 10% of the immediately available resources that Jamaica could draw down under its disaster risk financing framework, is hopelessly inadequate to meet the challenges presented by Hurricane Melissa to the housing stock of the country, especially in the worst affected parishes, but not uniquely to those parishes, because there are pockets of deprivation and shelter damage all over the country which are not being addressed. This situation has to be resolved. Furthermore, the methodology employed in roof has not built within its design anything to ensure a more resilient approach to the reconstruction of these houses. What is happening is that people who, I would say close to 100% of them, are uninsured, who have suffered either a total loss of their homes or substantial damage to their homes or enough damage to warrant assistance and are uninsured, are getting a fractional payment in the form of a grant of materials with a cash component which is very difficult to access, but with no guidance, no support to ensure that the methodologies used to rebuild their homes comply with even a basic set of standards to build a more resilient shelter for themselves. Therefore, we are just repeating and compounding the lack of resilience in the housing stock which existed prior to Melissa. This is poor management, poor policy. I was thinking when I was hearing of the horror stories about accessing the roof grants, why it is that this has become such a debacle when in the COVID crisis there was a range of grant programs created where data was uploaded and people were able to receive funds in their bank accounts or through the remittance agencies. Yes, the amounts were relatively small and we complained about that, but the methodology of distribution was worked through then. It seems that we've completely abandoned that template and have gone back to another system which is not working efficiently, which I gather was not put through any proper competitive bidding process, and which is now not giving the results that the people need. This is absolutely unsatisfactory. So we have a situation where people who are in desperate need of assistance are receiving a fraction of what they need. They are going to be using those funds to stretch it as best they can, which means the cheapest solutions will be pursued, not the ones that will be lasting. So we are not building any form of resilience into the rebuilding effort after Melissa. And we're just going to find ourselves back to square one if we have the misfortune of another bad weather event. The other thing I wanted to mention at this time is the situation with the Middle East and the war. We are now approaching the end of the second month of that conflict. We have seen the price of fuel at the pump going up week after week after week. We have been told by major corporate distributors and wholesalers in the food trade that food prices are going to start going up as well. It is going to flow through to other critical inputs, fertilizers, chemicals, medications, all of the different products, plastic-related products that have some form of petrochemical base in them. Everything is going to be impacted by this. The government has been completely silent as to their response to this incipient crisis on the people. There's no provision in the budget for any form of assistance. We heard from Petrojam that it has cost them, I think, $5 million US to mid-March from not having passed on the full dollar impact of the increase in oil prices that they have been incurring. But they have been making losses for the last few years, so they're in no position to finance that form of subsidy, and they're going to be depending on government for a bailout there. There's no bailout for them in the budget. And you know, the last PNP administration had the foresight of entering into an oil hedging program to protect Jamaica from what we are seeing now. It was funded by a special tax that was dedicated to financing that oil hedging program, which is essentially an insurance policy that if oil prices go above a certain figure per barrel, Jamaica gets a cash payment to cover that cost. This government discontinued that program, abandoned that insurance, but kept the tax in place and has been using it as part of the general revenue of the country. So now that we're facing the horror of oil prices at around $100 a barrel, when the budget was cast at an assumption of $60 a barrel. We are facing that with no protection, but the tax very much still in place and being paid by motorists, by consumers of electricity, and everyone in the society who pays tax effectively. This is a deplorable situation, and the government needs to come out and speak to how they intend to manage the impact of this cost of living crisis that is unfolding on the Jamaican people. Are we going to see any targeted relief for PATH beneficiaries? Are we going to see any targeted relief for Melissa victims? People who have already suffered massive damage to their homes and inadequate assistance in resolving their shelter needs are now going to be impacted by a cost of living crisis. What is to be done about them? What is to be done in terms of more general relief, especially for low-income families who will be having to bear the cost of increased prices for everything that they consume? The government has been silent. Many other governments around the world have already put measures in place to protect their populations. Ours has remained mum. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will close there. I thank everybody for participating and listening. And as I said, we wanted to put on record our assessment of what is facing the country at this time in the aftermath of Melissa, when the government seeks to pass the NARA legislation, which is their centerpiece structural effort to ensuring Jamaica's recovery, but which will not address the clear and present needs of our society, which the government is hopelessly ignoring and leaving the people feeling abandoned, hopeless, and in despair. Thank you for listening.
If you visit our website at www.pnpjamaica.org, under the Hurricane Relief portal, we had an expenditure of all the monies we've raised to support families in distress as a result of Hurricane Melissa. It's a full accounting of both revenue and expenditure. Therefore, we are living up to our standards of accountability and transparency. We invite the government to follow suit. At this time, we will open the floor for questions. If you are online and you wish to pose a question, please use the raised hand icon. We will acknowledge you. When the mic is open, please state your name, the media house you represent, and proceed with your question. If you prefer to type the question in the chat, please go ahead and do so, and we will read that question for you. If you're in the room and you have a question, please indicate by a raised hand, and we'll take the microphone to you. Same procedure applies.
Morning, I'm Jamila Maitland from TVJ. It's as if the members of parliament were completing each other's sentences about the roofs program. What is an appropriate timeline for an extension? Has that been discussed to say what is it that people need in order to apply? What are they saying? And two, the senator gave a breakdown of the damage assessment, right, with the 18% almost eating up the entire budget. Was the assessment that's a $10 billion? Does the opposition believe that the assessment done, or the monies that's a $10 billion was done preemptively, because we're now seeing more people benefiting, and especially that 42% and 40% of the minor and major damages not being included? And if I can squeeze one more in, at the Petersfield High School, that's where majority of shelteries are. What role has the Member of Parliament played, if any, with the relocation? And more specifically, do you know if the shelteries were prioritized for the roofs program?
Thank you for your questions. I'll take the first. Senator Floyd will follow with the second, and MP Vaz with the third. We have not discussed a timeline for what we believe is an acceptable period by which the government should extend the program. What we are consistent about is that they ought to reopen it, but also give the information to the constituents so they know when, where, and how they can access relief. So if it's even a week that you extend it by, or 3 months, as long as people know, visit these locations at this time, and you will get assistance this way or that way. We're asking for openness, transparency, and communication. We also need to know who is already on the list. And MPs can serve a great purpose in assisting with this if the government will share with us who has already benefited, who is left to benefit, who won't benefit at all. That will increase our opportunity to assist our constituents in getting the information they need. Senator, okay.
Before Floyd speaks, I just want to make the point that the roofs program was a program under the budget for last fiscal year that ended in March. That was an allocation under that. There's no provision in the budget for this year for, as I recall, any extension of roofs. But the truth is that roofs was inadequate. Roof was inadequate, is inadequate, needs to be extended because there are huge unfilled and unmet needs which must be addressed. There are persons who didn't, especially elderly people or more vulnerable people, who didn't know about the program at all. I get messages from people, I got one this week from an elderly lady living near St. Anne's Bay saying she don't know nothing about this roof thing and her house popped down and she's getting wet every time it rains and she's suffering. I'm sure there are many, many cases of that nature. So it needs to be reopened, it needs to be funded, and it needs to be made accessible through information being disseminated through channels which have been shown to work in the past, where people can access the information, and where people who don't know what's going on can find out what's going on. That was totally lacking in the roofs thing. I mean, I have sent WhatsApp messages to the minister asking how the cash component, which was announced if you could get a portion of the $200,000 grant in cash, $75,000, how you access that, because people in my constituency who got damaged and got assessed went to the hardware and couldn't access the money. He told me he'd get back to me. Twice I asked him. I just checked, disappearing messages. That's all gone, but I haven't received a response. And that's kind of typical as to how they operate.
All right, thank you. For clarity, I want to make it abundantly clear that I'm not saying that those who got minor damage or major damage will not get any support from the government. What I pointed to was that the 18% constitute 20,000, and when you do the calculation, that 20,000 would have eaten up the entire $10 billion if they got it. Yeah. So I want to make that clear. As it relates to the second issue that you raised, I can't speak to how the government came about with this figure of $10 billion, because it seems as if they just plucked it out of a hat. And I don't know if that is how public policy should be formulated. When there were estimates and projection that between 160 to 180,000 individuals across the island suffered some form of damage from their houses. I checked on the GIS website and I got those figures from there. So if it is that those were the projection, and a part of it is that 25,000, as my colleague Angela Brownberg pointed out, Dr. Angela Brownberg pointed out, 25,000 of those were totally damaged houses. The government should have had a better indication, using its own numbers, as to what would be a reasonable figure to use in order to start up this program. And then my leader pointed out the amount of monies that the government has said that it has mobilized internationally. And it has said that it is the biggest amount of funds in the history of Jamaica. But when you look at the amount that is allocated to housing, which is one of the biggest areas of impact from the hurricane, and only $10 billion has been allocated from that, it means that somebody is short-sighted, and it is not Floyd Morris.
Before Dwayne addresses your last question, I just want to add one other point. MP Dayton Campbell, Dr. Dayton Campbell, pointed out that small businesses, which proliferate Jamaica and are really the backbone of the economy, have received no real support since Melissa. Many of those businesses suffered severe damage, stock wiped out, the structures that the businesses are conducted from damaged, some destroyed, and so on. You're not going to have the economy returning to robust levels or achieving. I can't say returning because we haven't had robust levels of growth for a long time in this country. But you're not going to see the economy bouncing back the way it should unless there's a program of support to stimulate activity at that level of the economy. That should be a priority. When you talk about 6.7 billion US of resources that you're trumpeting that you've raised, and yet you're spending 60 million US on housing when the housing stock of the country has been perhaps the biggest asset class of damage, largely uninsured. That shows that, to me, a lack of care and concern and poor policy judgment. What are all these resources going to be used for then? What about the infrastructure of the country, the terribly damaged roads that are preventing people from conducting business, preventing JPS from reaching communities to restore light and making our farmers suffer and our people suffer? There should be an infrastructure restoration project being rolled out now and a housing program being rolled out now. These are critical things. Small business support program being rolled out now. 6 months pass. Time come to see some progress in this area. The people need it. And you're already seeing the signs of social dislocation with people starting to block roads in various parishes and so on in frustration. As the cost of living hit happens, you can only expect that people are going to be more and more frustrated. Well, it's a very serious situation which needs to be addressed. And the next hurricane season is almost upon us. And that is how we're going to be entering it, with our house not in order at all. Literally.
All right, with regards to the question about the priority of the roofs program for the residents at the shelter, or who was at the shelter, they were promised that they would be prioritized, but there is no evidence of that. And for the persons who are currently at the shelter, none of them are actually on the roofs program. They have not heard anything about that. They weren't assessed because, again, with the concern about going out in the communities when persons aren't there, if they were at the shelter, they didn't know when their persons would have assessed their community, so most of them were not assessed. So they're not on that program. And based on what we are seeing so far, as I said, there's no urgency with regards to getting those persons in a suitable accommodation. From my standpoint as Member of Parliament, what we can do, as we have been doing, is to lobby for these people on a continuous basis. From the government standpoint, we have not gotten any sufficient resources to relocate anybody, because the funds we got cannot offer relocation services. It's just basically to provide some material for some persons, and that's from last year. And it was a maximum of 100,000 for each person. So you will understand that's a drop in the bucket for what needs to be done to repair or to rehabilitate a house. What we have done though, through private individuals, we have been able to secure 2 houses in my constituency for 2 persons, 2 families who were at the shelter before. So we are trying to continue on that basis to see how many persons we can assist in that vein. But as you know, a lot of constituencies were affected, a lot of persons are lobbying to these same private individuals. So we are lucky that we got at least 2 for those in shelters to actually let them be able to relocate. But that is the only way that we have been able to do it is through the private individuals, because what we have gotten from the government is not sufficient. But we'll continue to lobby to the government and to Jamaica and to everybody who is listening to any way you can assist us, please do, because what we're getting from the government is simply not enough.
Just a quick follow-up for MP Vaz. There was a report recently by the JTA president, and I asked in that vein about reports of sexual indecency at the Petersfield High School, and that's because it's being used as a shelter. Are you aware of any such reports, and you know what's happening there?
Well, up to yesterday when I was there were persons from child services who were there to investigate. I don't have much information because we are awaiting the investigations before we make public comments on that.
I just want to make one point. I'm glad that MP Nikisha Birchall mentioned that on our website you can find an accounting of the cash and kind that we were able to raise for Melissa support and how those funds were expended. And if there are any questions on the details of that, they can be directed to our treasurer, Keisha Anderson, who provided that accounting. I'm calling on the government to provide full and comprehensive accounting for all funds received from donors since Hurricane Melissa. I know that diaspora groups are anxious to see an accounting for all the funds that they provided through the government portals. I myself participated at the request of Minister Grange in a telethon to encourage people to give through their portals. There has been no proper accounting for any of those resources. In fact, what we have seen is fundraising events. I can think of one in Florida where funds were routed through a US NGO with which a minister of government has an association. I can't see how that was an appropriate way for handling hurricane relief, where the government of Jamaica is part of the promotion of the event to raise funds. And I hear the Prime Minister is up in New York to beg more resources from the diaspora. I hope that whoever is there will demand of them, of the government, of him, a fulsome accounting for everything that has been received so far and how those funds have been utilized. And I would just close my little intervention now by saying what you can see from the way this government is operating is that they're in la-la land. The level of destruction and sufferation and deprivation in the areas which were affected by the hurricane remains real, and all we can hear is high percentages of this being restored and that being dispersed and so on. But the impact on the people's lives and the residual suffering that people are facing is not being addressed.
Go ahead, Liver.
Yeah. Morning again. I have Liver and Barrett, the Gleaner, thanks. Dr. Campbell indicated in his presentation that in relation to transportation costs and so on, eating into the roof grants. And you indicated also that you have had a discussion with the ministry or the minister about having those hardwares being more centrally located, or at least in each division. You did not indicate, Mr. Campbell, the response you got from the ministry or the minister. That's one. Two, I've heard all the MPs speak about the need for the extension of the roofs program. What I have not heard is a sort of coordinated or a figure in terms of how many constituents or how many residents in the constituency is represented here, that you can, if you have a database of the persons who might benefit from, if in these constituencies that are represented here, if you have a total figure of the people who could benefit under the ROOFs program. And then, if I might digress, Mr. Goling, for you, the critics have said, Mr. Goling, that the issue with Jackden and Mr. Gordon is not so much on the finance side. It is on the issue of a principle of a company being involved in transactions that the authorities believe circumvent the law. Critics have said that. I wanted to hear you on that. And also, if you could tell the public, when you say the matter is before the Party's Integrity Commission, what should the public understand? What timelines are you giving them when that will be ventilated before that internal body? And what should the public expect insofar as what the Integrity Commission might do in relation to that matter?
Thank you, Laverne. I'll address the questions about what this press conference was called for, but I see you've gone beyond that. Yes, my first message on that topic to the minister was on February 25, 2026. He didn't respond to that. I sent a follow-up on March 2, 2026. Didn't respond to that either. I spoke to him about it in the lunchroom at the Parliament, and I asked him the question at the Standing Finance Committee as well, when we were examining the budget. And he said that they would look at it. This is Minister Pernell Charles Jr. that we're speaking about. And it is obvious that just based on how rural Jamaica is structured, and I know that MP Burchell was at pains to communicate that to persons, that rural Jamaica is much different from the urban spaces. You may have somebody that lives in the constituency and they live 2 hours away from somebody else within the same constituency, or even 3 hours away from somebody else in the same constituency. So if you're coming from, say, Berkshire, which is way up on the northwest border with St. Elizabeth, and you have to go all the way down to Sav to get some material, easily you can see it will cost $80,000 or $100,000 to transport it. If you were, however, going to a hardware in Darlington or in Betheltown, then you would save significantly and you would be able to get more material. And the problem is, and I think Dr. Morris said it, and the leader as well, the problem is that based on how it is structured, most people are being called upon to just build back board houses, which is putting them in a very precarious position should another event take place. And we know that something else will take place. We hope it's no time soon, but eventually it will. And if you are not putting persons in a position for them to build a proper structure, then you're going to have that problem. The second issue is in relation to those who should benefit. So when this process started, we tried as best as possible to communicate to our constituents about them using the self-assessment form, about them going to the Ministry of Labour, and then we spoke to persons within the ministry. A few of the chief technical directors were responsive, I must say, at least to me, and we were able to submit the communities to them for them to go to the areas. What we do not know, which is what the complaint is, if we haven't gotten that final list to say that in your constituency, these are the numbers of persons that were assessed, these are the persons that are severe, these are the ones that are major, these are the ones that are minor. And it links back to the point that Professor was making. If the allocation, the severe category would use up all of the allocation and they have given to persons who have minor and major, it simply means that everybody in the severe cannot benefit, because you would have exhausted the funds, right? So that is a problem that we are having, that you have persons who have been totally destroyed They were assessed, but they have not received anything. And those persons are still living in inhumane conditions. And so the appeal really to the government is to just have a heart, man. Think of these persons that, but for the grace of God, it could have been any one of us, you know.
I just wanted to add to the clarification being given by Dr. Campbell, that, which is why we keep saying that apart from opening the period and allowing individuals to self-report or to be assessed, the information as to what currently exists needs to be shared and shared widely. You would have heard MP Ian Hales say, although the minister said that every MP has gotten a list, that he has not gotten a list. Some persons have gotten a list, they don't know if it is half, if it is a quarter, or if it is just a couple more left to be done, or how many. And that, I believe, it is the transparency and the accountability portion that is absolutely missing, which means that even if we were to get more time for persons to report, we still wouldn't know where we are.
Yes, on the matter you raised, Laverne, as it stands now, the Auditor General's report focused on University Hospital and their administrative weaknesses and issues arising therefrom. So there was no direct judgment as to the conduct of anyone else. However, we know what has taken place so far. It was in that context that I thought it appropriate, especially since there are ongoing investigations, I think, by the Integrity Commission, that the action which has been taken should be taken. In terms of the, and I mean by us on our side, in terms of the Party's Integrity Commission, that is an internal body that advises the leadership of the party on matters to do with ethics and integrity by they can investigate within the parameters available to them. They can at least dispassionately assess what happened and how they feel it should be dealt with. So, you know, that is what will happen. I can't give you a direct time frame for that. And they report to me as party leader. And based on what their findings are and what their recommendations are, I will then consider the situation in the light of that. But that's essentially an internal party process which is going to be, it's being pursued and will help to guide my decision making going forward. But that Integrity Commission was set up under Portia Simpson Miller and has helped the party. For example, they vet our candidates before our candidate is approved to represent the party, whether at the local government level or at the national level. They have to go before that committee, submit a fulsome, fit and proper report and a face questioning on that before a recommendation is then made to the leader as to whether or not that person should go forward. And so it's been a useful structural innovation and assists in matters such as this as well.
Okay, we'll take our final question from online. Siobhan, please unmute and go ahead. Hearing you well.
I have a series of questions, but I'll start with the ones who are directly related. The Prime Minister is, as the opposition leader suggests, is going to take the NARA legislation this afternoon in the House of Representatives. What is his recommendation as to how NARA should be used to address the concerns he's raised regarding housing? And my other two questions are in relation to Mr. Golding's Integrity Commission filings, because usually they would have been made public around October or so in the newspapers, but that was not done in relation to the 2024 declarations. Do you have an understanding as to why there's been a delay, as suggested by from the Integrity Commission? And secondly, in the matter of Dennis Gordon, the suggestion is that Mr. Gordon could have potentially breached the Customs Act in terms of making a false declaration. Do you still stand by your suggestion that he has done nothing wrong or he did not break the law in relation to the Jackman matter?
Thank you. Could you repeat your first question?
About NARA.
What is the recommendation Mr. Gordon could put forward in terms of how NARA can be used to address the housing concerns?
NARA has been established, as I understand it, to execute projects that Cabinet approves. And in the Prime Minister's budget presentation, he identified a large list of projects that the government wishes to pursue in the years to come. Bypass roads, moving communities from one location to another, to free up lands for redevelopment, that sort of thing. So that seems to be the main purpose of NARA. We've heard others, like the Minister of Justice, saying he's hoping that NARA will build some new court facilities. I think these STEAM schools that the government is intent on building, these STEAM academies, NARA is going to do that as well. I don't hear anything about NARA being used to address the current issues facing Jamaicans in the aftermath of Melissa, the current infrastructure challenges that are making life and recovery very difficult, the shelter challenges that many thousands of Jamaicans continue to suffer in. The only program for this was roofs, and roofs was scoped inadequately. Its design was defective because it didn't have any resilience built into it or anything in it to ensure a more resilient approach to housing construction. That was absent from it. So there are clear gaps, and I don't think NARA is the answer for those gaps. I think those gaps just require a focus of the Cabinet on developing a program to address those things and rolling them out quickly and identifying how they will be funded. This big envelope of resources available to the government should be, in my opinion, used to deal with the things that are clear and present needs of the country, so that the country can settle down, so that the country can feel restored and ready to move forward again, rather than being in a post-disaster situation for a protracted period of time. There were two other questions. One was for, what was it, Dennis? Go. Oh, you'll recall last year that there was a protracted period when the Integrity Commission didn't have certain personnel in place as a result of the tenure of existing officers coming to an end, and there was some kind of impasse that delayed the appointments of their successors. And that, I think, has caused some delay in their operations. So that's where that is. I can't comment any further on that.
All right, so continue to engage with the People's National Party on our Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter platforms at Jamaica PNP. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Have a good morning.
We are just at a live coverage of the People's National Party press conference over there, or the office of the leader of the opposition, sorry. What is going on now is the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament. It's on the other side of my channel. Go over there and watch it. Julian Robinson is drilling the people of the University of West Indies Hospital right now. So it's live. So go over there, all 365 of you. Go over to the other part of my channel where the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament, we're having a live feed coming from the Parliament. And at 2 o'clock this evening, that's 3 o'clock US time, we'll be going to live to the Parliament also. But right now, the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament is on. We have just had a live coverage of the People's National Party press conference from the leader of the opposition, Mark Jefferson Golding. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Go over to the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament now as a live feed is going on over there. Go on over there. Thank you so much. God bless you. And may God bless our island home, Jamaica land we love, as we continue to bring you live coverage of happenings in Jamaica.
When the game gets rough and this life just seems so tough, make we talk, my people, make we talk. When this town becomes an ugly place, don't let it erase the smile from your face. Make we talk, people, make we talk. Conversation is the key, a guiding light for you and me. Spark a talk and you will see. Conflict solver A to Z. World leaders master the art of self-defense just by talk. So people, make we talk. Hey, we're living in a world that on ourselves we must depend. Make we talk.